podcast.
Touchdown Ram! Recovered by the Chargers. Touchdown UCLA!
With USC great and NFL stud, Frostee Rucker.
The Trojans back in front!
And LAFB founder Ryan Dyrud on the Believe Podcast Network and LAFBnetwork.com. This is your destination for Los Angeles football.
What's going on, Los Angeles football fans? Welcome into the LA Football Show, listening live right here on AM, the mightier 1090. Always can be found on the LA Football Network, anywhere you get your podcasts. Also on YouTube, you can just find us at LAFB Network. We're also on the Believe Podcast Network. We're everywhere. Thank you for tuning in. Got a great show for you today as we preview this week's games. What are we? Week 6 in the NFL, week 8 or so in college football. They kind of stagger the weeks, so I don't know exactly. You have week 0 now and all that, but essentially week 8, I believe, is what we're at. We got some good ones. You know, the Trojans are on a bye, I think, thank God. And they get back in a week where they will travel to South Bend to face currently 14th ranked Notre Dame. Don't know if that will change, but good to see that rivalry back. You know, I like the Trojans in that game. I think they've looked bad this year in a lot of games, but having a bye week going into it against an old foe, an old rival, away, clearly the Trojans can't play at home right now, so I think away they play better. But anyway, we're going to get into that next week. Should have some good guests lined up for that one. Frostee will be back to help break that down, and maybe some old Trojans we'll get on too to just talk about what that rivalry meant for them. UCLA travels to Seattle to face a 2-3 Washington club that, they're 2-3, but they're still Washington. Washington still scares me. I know it's a different, no more Chris Peterson there, but Coach Lake, is trying to turn that program back to what it was before. They're still a formidable opponent. What's been their biggest bugaboo is their quarterback play. They've just had really poor quarterback play up there in Washington. They had a guy by the name of Ethan Garbers who transferred from there to UCLA, who is now DTR's backup and should be the starter next year. They also had a guy that now is in the Heisman talks playing for Fresno State, who UCLA knows well after what he did at the Rose Bowl. So they've struggled at quarterback, but they still have a solid defense. Bruins will still have their hands full. They got to get back to basics. We saw last week a little bit get back to that with the running game, both Britton Brown and Zach Charbonnet going over 100 yards. So hopefully we'll see that again. DTR, his health, seems like a concern every week. Is he fully healthy? I know he's battling through it. So we'll keep an eye on that. Make sure to go to LAFBnetwork.com for updates there. We have a couple great articles up right now. One by Jamal Madney, one of our top beat writers there who covers the Bruins, and really broke that game down well against Arizona and also looked forward to the Huskies. So make sure to check that out. But for your Chargers and Rams, we got a great matchup for the Chargers. We got a very must-win game for the Rams. And I say must-win because not that they have to win this game with where their record stands or where they sit in the NFC, but a must-win because they're playing a team that they should just blow the doors off of in the 1-4 New York Giants. And you lose to teams like this, and that's a reason for concern. We saw last year them lose to the Jets, and it was just, it cost them home field advantage in the playoffs. A loss to the Jets. So we cannot see that happen. But both games, 10 a.m. kickoff here in LA. So get up early, crack open that Brewery X, your little breakfast beer, and get ready to watch these games as both teams are away. So we'll be all watching the confines of, the bar atmosphere, whether you go to Brewery X, whether you go to a local bar or at home. We can be talking virtually. Should be a lot of fun. So we're going to start with this Chargers breakdown, though. I do have a great guest coming on with me, Kevin Oestreicher. He is the host of Locked On Ravens, also the managing editor for the Ravens Wire. So he's going to talk to me about that. And then right after, immediately following that interview, we'll have Tino Rodriguez, who is the executive producer for FTN Network and also covers the Giants for the Clapback Network, join me to talk about this Giants-Rams game. So both are a lot of fun. Interviews were great. Hope you guys enjoy. Let's jump right into this phenomenal Chargers preview with my man, Kevin. All right, Chargers fans, as I mentioned in the intro, excited about this game, extremely excited about this game. What a matchup we have, 2 4-1 teams with the Chargers traveling to Baltimore to face the Baltimore Ravens. And joining me on the LA Football Show to help break this down, he is the host and producer of Locked On Ravens, also the managing editor for the Ravens Wire, Kevin Oestreicher. What's up, my man? How you doing? Thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks so much, Ryan. I'm excited for this game too. It's going to be a good one. I mean, 2 4-1 football teams, 2 star quarterbacks. I think 2 teams that are hungry for a win to go 5-1. I think it's going to be a good game.
Yeah, and before we even get going to that, it looks like you're like in LA right now. You got the palm tree in the background, the nice setting. Are you in a doctor's office or are you in LA? What's going on?
No. We started on YouTube on Locked On Ravens about a month ago, and I needed a background or something, and this room just happened to have like a beachy theme, and I'm like, you know what? It looks good. It looks cool. I kind of went with it, and here we are. So I'm happy with it, and it kind of gives off the positive vibes, which I'm happy about too.
There you go. You need to talk to my boy Sosa. I'm sure you know him, does Locked On Rams. He gets a lot of crap for his just bland white background. I think he needs some palm trees. You need to hook him up.
Right.
Yeah, I'm in like my daughter's nursery, so I got the full room. I need
the plant in the background. It's a nice touch over there.
That's my one thing. And then way in the background, you can't really see it. I have a couple Rams posters.
Oh yeah.
But my whole body blocks them, so no one can even see it anyway. But Kevin, man, this is going to be a phenomenal game. 2 4-1 teams. In my opinion, kind of the cream of the crop right now, the AFC, which is crazy to say about the Chargers. And I know it's so early and things can change, but at this point in the season, I always say this: we only know what we know, and what we know is the Chargers look pretty damn good. We know the Ravens have been good for a long time. Let me start with this, and this is probably an unfair question, and I probably know your answer considering you cover the Ravens. But if you had to start a team right now, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, 2 of the game's best right now, who are you taking to start your team to lead it at quarterback?
Well, I can't go with anyone other than Lamar Jackson, Ryan. I mean, nothing against Justin Herbert and what he showed. These are 2 phenomenal quarterbacks, but with Lamar Jackson, right now at least, he's still 24 years old, which is unbelievable. Herbert, young too, don't get me wrong. But this is a player who's improved each and every season, and now we're starting to see, what he can do, not just running the football, but throwing it. But this has been nothing new to Ravens fans, people who cover the Ravens, everybody in Baltimore. He's able to do a lot of different things on the football field. And now the teams are starting to key in on the run game and kind of going with that narrative of, if you stop the run and force Lamar Jackson to throw, you win the game. All of a sudden, he's putting up 442 passing yards and 4 touchdowns and coming back from 22 to down 22-3 with 3:06 left in the third quarter. I mean, this guy's incredible. He was expected to take another leap this season, a huge one, and he's done just that. You can put pieces around him that really can succeed in all situations. And he was working with guys like Seth Roberts and Willie Snead and obviously guys like Marquise Brown as well. But he didn't have the huge weapons. For example, Kyler Murray got DeAndre Hopkins and Josh Allen got Stephon Diggs. And I don't want to take away from what Marquise Brown has done to improve over the course of his career. But now with Rashad Bateman and Sammy Watkins and Mark Andrews and other guys, obviously he's finally starting to get those weapons. And we're finally starting to see Lamar Jackson unlock more and more of his potential.
Yeah, and that's a extremely fair point. Just hasn't had the true wide receiver 1 talent, if you will, there. And again, like you said, no disrespect to those guys they have, but just didn't have that go-to guy. And I'll be the first to admit, when he was coming out of Louisville, I thought he could absolutely be successful in this league, but it was my opinion that in order to do so, he had to go to a team that was willing to adapt their offensive playbook around his skill set. And in the past, NFL teams have shown that they weren't going to do that with other quarterbacks. They would say, you learn our system, you learn how to be under center, you learn how to do this and that. And that's why we saw a lot of quarterbacks not really make it at the next level. Greg Roman, John Harbaugh, and this Ravens team seem to have done that early on. But now we're seeing Lamar progress into, I guess, a more of the sense true NFL quarterback because he can do it all. What have you just seen in his progression from rookie season when he came in late and made that push after Flacco went down to where he is now? I know he had an MVP there squeezed in the middle, which is crazy, but what have you just seen in that progression and why he has been so successful?
Yeah, well, you're exactly right, Ryan. I think the coaching staff being able to work with him and being willing to do so has been a huge part of this. The Ravens really went all in on Lamar Jackson. This wasn't something they could just say we're going to draft him and kind of see what happens and then kind of change the playbook, but then not really do it in case it doesn't happen. No, they changed it. They committed to Lamar Jackson. And the most impressive part about that was when he came in for Joe Flacco during his 2018 rookie season, he was pretty much running a Joe Flacco offense. And when you talk about Joe Flacco versus Lamar Jackson, those are two very different players. Yeah. So he was still putting up success, went 6-1 over those final 7 games in 2018. And now he is 34-8 as a starter. That's 81% of his starts at the NFL level. Just amazing efficiency from him. But the coaching staff has worked with him coming out of college. I agree. I was a big Lamar Jackson fan coming out of college. I thought that he would have been a perfect fit on this Ravens team if they were willing to work with him. But he was a raw passer. Now, what the Ravens have done with him is work on his deep ball accuracy, work on throws outside the numbers. He does all that well, and he's been able to do all of it well. But the narratives surrounding him have kind of taken away from what he's done. And that's why it's like the people in Baltimore who have watched him week in and week out and just, really studied the film on him understand that this is a player that he's been for a while. He just has needed to take a step or two to unlock it. The turnovers have crept back in a little bit this season. He had a big problem with him his rookie season, kind of cut down on him his second and third year, and now they're back a tiny bit. His decision-making also could improve a tiny bit, but it's still improved every single year he's been in the league, and the weapons have grown with him. Marquise Brown has gone to, I think, one of the best receivers in the league right now at this point based off of what he's doing, and Mark Andrews is one of the best tight ends. So you have the weapons who have grown with him. You have Lamar Jackson who's improved every single season, and this is a young core on offense that has the potential to do damage for a really long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of times when fans, and this is no discredit to fans, but when they credit a quarterback success, usually they look at the OC and, rightfully so, that's the guy calling the plays. But how much has James Urban, your quarterback coach, had a role in Lamar Jackson's development, I guess? Because the quarterback coach is the one that's with him every single day. The OC obviously oversees everything, but usually the QB coach has a lot more say in what happens day in and day out operations at practice. How much has James Urban played a role in that?
Yeah, James Urban has been huge. He's actually gotten some offensive coordinator calls from teams. I believe Philadelphia is one of those teams. He's someone, continuity is huge for, you mentioned it, for quarterbacks, especially with quarterback coaches and offensive coordinators. In the Joe Flacco era, the Ravens had a new offensive coordinator like every season. He was cycling through offensive guys. I could name Cam Cameron, Jim Caldwell, Mark Trestman, Marty Morning, all these different offensive coordinators. With the Ravens, I think they wanted to put Lamar Jackson in a bit more of a consistent situation where he had the same coaches around him. And I think that's helped him grow because he's not cycling through playbooks, cycling through faces and coaches. And that's helped him in his development because he doesn't have to worry about, all right, is this stuff going to change in a year or in 2 years? Now, Roman has been on the hot seat for a lot of fans over these past couple of seasons. People have not been happy with his offensive passing playbook. But I think he's shown growth this season, and Urban's a big part of that because they're bringing in the coaches around Roman to help out. And with Urban, getting those offensive coordinator calls is huge because that means teams around the league are recognizing what he's doing with one of the star quarterbacks in the NFL.
It's so perfect you bring up Greg Roman because I was going to go to him next. And he's such an interesting coach because it seems like there can be a 4-game stretch where all of a sudden he's a hot name for a head coaching position. And then the next 4 games, all of a sudden, he's going to be fired from the OC position. So it's like such a hot and cold feeling with Greg Roman. What's the thought? I mean, you kind of alluded to it, but what's the thought with Ravens Nation on Roman? Is he a guy that you think can be a head coach? Is this kind of his ceiling? Because he's bounced around the league a bunch. We've seen him develop other quarterbacks. I believe he was with Colin Kaepernick out here in San Francisco as well. So what's kind of his role, I guess, in this organization? Do you see him moving on, or is it kind of the ceiling here as an OC?
Well, I think for the Ravens, they do need a specific type of offensive coordinator to help run that offense. Not saying Lamar Jackson can't play in a lot of systems, but obviously if you want to maximize his talent, you want to put him in a system that helps him. And that's with every quarterback. It's not just Lamar Jackson. If you want to maximize a quarterback's talent, put him in a system that helps him and caters to his skill set. So with Roman, yeah, we've seen the rumors. I think Cleveland, before they ended up hiring Kevin Stefanski, was on the Roman list of maybe coaches they wanted to hire, but it is very hot and cold with him. I know that people are very upset with his passing concept, especially over the last few years. Very little separation between routes, guys running the same routes in the same area, just not having a lot of continuity and even discrepancy between the plays. Is like every play looks the same and the guys aren't running the routes. It goes on the offensive coordinator. It goes on the wide receivers. And some of the wide receivers even said, hey, look, it's on us. But at the same time, I think that the Ravens are in an interesting situation because I think personally Roman has been better this season. He has had stretches where it's gone kind of back to what we've all known, but he's been better at adjusting this season. For example, he didn't call a great first half in Indianapolis. He adjusted, and we all know what happened in the second half. The Ravens go and they come back down 22-3. So could he become a head coach? I could definitely see it, but the thing with Roman, is everybody's worried about his track record because he's had a great year with a quarterback, whether that's been Kaepernick or Tyrod Taylor in Buffalo or Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. He's had that great season, and then the next year, the offense falls off of a cliff, specifically the passing offense. So his ability to create a run offense, he's one of the best in the business. But can he be that, dual threat offensive coordinator? I think he's starting to show it right now, but he has to continue that. There have been some bad halves, but he's also been able to adjust a bit better. So maybe we'll hear his name, maybe we won't.
Yeah, I remember last season, I think it was like week 4 or 5, when the two hot names were Brian Daboll and Greg Roman. And then that obviously shifted a lot throughout the season. Daboll's still a hot name, Roman not so much. But from the outside looking in, I think that was good, him able to stay in Ravens and keep that continuity like you talked about. And now we're seeing Lamar Jackson play even better than he has, which, he already has an MVP under his belt. So I want to talk quickly, Kevin, about the offensive line. The Chargers, that's been a contentious topic for many, many years. They just cannot seem to get the offensive line right. Finally, it seems like they have. They've made a huge effort this offseason, adding players. Unfortunately, I've seen some injuries, but they still have played much better than they have in years past in protecting Justin Herbert. Ravens, I feel like, again, from the outside looking in, you can talk more, but I feel like overall have always had fairly strong offensive lines, had drafted well with Ronnie Stanley, Orlando Brown, who now is no longer there. Obviously, he was actually a big name, a big target for the Chargers to go after, but he ended up in KC, as we all know. So how's the offensive line, bounce back from losing a guy like Orlando Brown, and how have they just played overall? Because sometimes it can be hard blocking for a guy that can run as well as Lamar, because you really don't know where it's going to end up.
Yeah, the offensive line it's been a journey so far this season. You mentioned Orlando Brown no longer there, and now Ronnie Stanley with his ankle injury. He's been out ever since week 1. So those two bookend tackles, you start the year in 2020 with both of them. You're in the year now in 2021 with neither of them. So the Ravens have adjusted. They have Alejandro Villanueva, the former Pittsburgh Steelers left tackle, who originally started off the year playing right tackle. He's shifted back over to the left side. They have Patrick McCary, who can literally play all 5 positions on the line. He was a center for them. He's played some guard. He's now out at right tackle, and he's been one of the best tackles in the NFL. So they found a pretty good gem in him just because of his versatility and what he's been able to do at tackle. They started the year with Tyree Phillips at left guard. He gets injured in week 1. He's on IR. He should be coming back soon, but they've had a rotation of Ben Powers and Ben Cleveland, the two Bens. So they have been rotating, but Ben Cleveland gets hurt against the Colts last week. So now it's kind of just Powers. And then when Phillips comes back, it could be Phillips in there as well. They moved Bradley Bozeman over from left guard to center this season. And also Kevin Zeitler, a new addition there at right guard, a very steady veteran. So it's been shuffle galore. They're kind of playing musical chairs on the offensive line because of all of the injuries they've had, but it's held up decently well. There have been struggles. I think week 1 was the worst game we saw, and luckily that was back in week 1, so we're kind of moving away from it. But, they've been shuffling, and it can be hard with continuity on the offensive line because guys just aren't familiar with playing with each other on certain positions. But I'd say so far it's been fine. They've definitely found some gems. Bradley Bozeman has played really well. So Lamar Jackson, I think, is having a bit better of a time this year than he did last year with the offensive line, especially in that Buffalo game in the divisional round where it was just brutal.
Yeah, it certainly helps. And it's always interesting to see how those injuries play out and who steps up in their absence. And, you get a veteran like Andre Villanueva, if I can say it. There we go. Alejandro Villanueva. And it's always interesting to see how those kind of pan out. So before we get to the defense, Kevin, this team, seemingly every running back on the roster went down. You guys signed guys off the street, some veteran presences, still are able to have a formidable rushing attack. This Chargers team, surprisingly, has really struggled against the run, currently ranked last against the run defensively, and not something you want to see from a Brandon Staley defense who finished 3rd last year, who comes from the Vic Fangio tree, who really emphasizes against the run. And I look back to, we kind of talked off air, back to that Bronco game where the Broncos defense overall, I thought, did pretty well. They basically said, we're going to force Lamar to beat us with his arm. We're going to take away the running game. And they did a fairly good job of that, but they offensively just couldn't do anything. Now, this Chargers team has a much better offense. So if they're able to take away from the run from the Ravens, do you think this is a game where they can win still, trusting Lamar's arm? I know we've talked about it already a little bit in this interview, but is that something where you feel comfortable with, or do they really need to hammer the run home and have some success against this Charger team who ranks dead last?
Yeah, well, I think for the sake of their team, they need to get it going in their run game. It's been a struggle over these last couple of weeks. Against Indianapolis, they averaged 3.4 yards per carry. It was not a good game on the ground for them. Lamar Jackson led them 14 carries for 62 yards, but we saw what happens, and we've seen it over the last 3 weeks. If we go back to week 3 against Detroit, you talked about week 4 against Denver and then week 5 against Indianapolis. Those 3 games, it seems like teams are kind of keying in on the run. The Ravens have noticed that, and they've gone 3-0 over those last 3 weeks with Lamar Jackson carrying them, not with his legs, but with his arm, which is something he's been able to do, and now he's putting it on display for the entire National Football League. So I am comfortable if the Chargers do decide to do that, because it leaves guys like Marquise Brown, who is having a phenomenal season this year, in one-on-one situations. Mark Andrews, one-on-one situations. Rashad Bateman, it feels like he'll be back for this one. It's not in stone or anything, but he could be back, and he's someone who could have a big debut if that happens. So if the Chargers are selling out to stop the run, putting more guys in the box, and making sure that Baltimore doesn't get their run game off the ground, Lamar Jackson now has the weapons around him, including Devin Duvernay and James Prochet, 2 second-year guys as well. Don't want to leave them out, who can hurt the Chargers defense. Now, don't get me wrong, the Chargers secondary is phenomenal, but the Ravens, if they're put in those one-on-one situations and Lamar Jackson has time, he can scramble as well. I think it'd be okay. He's shown that it could be okay. Now, the Chargers defense is a different animal with their secondary, as I just talked about, but I am confident that if the Chargers end up trying to sell out and stop the run, the Ravens could still put together a good offensive performance.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And, having a guy like Derwin James in the back end certainly helps this Charger team, who has been healthy, and Asante Samuel Jr., his ascent, who had some struggles last week. I actually got pulled for a little bit, but he is still kind of the guy, and he's a rookie, so he's going to have some growing pains. But looking at the defense, Wink Martindale, is there a more interesting man in the NFL than Wink?
No, not at all. He's such a good coordinator, but as a person, he's just incredible.
Did you see his? I'm sure you did. Did you see his quote about Justin Herbert today when talking to the LA media?
Yeah, it's all this different stuff with Don Martin. Now, and look, he respects his opponents, totally. But he's not just respectful about it. He's a funny guy, and all that he does with his quotes and everything that he says to the media and how he cares. He has the chain that's made some waves. So he's such a funny and interesting guy.
I'm just curious. I believe the quote, there was a bunch of them, but the main one was, when referring to Justin Herbert, something like he can throw a strawberry through a battleship. And I'm just so curious what that means. I know it was meant as respect. I just don't know what it means.
Yeah, no, there's no disrespect. I don't know. A small object through a big thing. It's a funny quote, but what I do know is that the Ravens, they respect Justin Herbert, and they're ready to face a really talented offense with a bunch of different weapons on it.
So speaking of the Chargers offense, what's been exciting covering this team is how versatile they've been. Joe Lombardi came in here and instilled somewhat of a Saints offense with some new wrinkles in it, and Brandon Staley's obviously had a big stay in that. But obviously you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert who's playing at an MVP level. You have all the weapons on the outside, but they have a solid running game too that they can lean on when needed. And they've been pretty not transparent, but they've been pretty versatile in using both sets of that game. So for Chargers fans listening and not knowing much about this Ravens defense, what's kind of the focal point of the Ravens defense? What's the strength and what's potentially the weakness that you're, I guess, concerned about the Chargers exposing?
Well, it's kind of like the opposite of what the Chargers are doing on defense this year. I think the strength is the run defense and the weakness is the pass defense right now. You have a team that lost Marcus Peters before the year started, and it wasn't like they lost him a month or two before the season. It was like 10 days before the year started. So It wasn't like they had the time to kind of work through it in the preseason, figure out what worked best for them and go from there. They had to scramble and figure out how they were going to kind of shift their defense, because Peters, he has such a high football IQ, and his ability to do a lot of different things on the field is missed. Now, Anthony Averitt has stepped up in a big way, but last week against the Colts, he did not have a good game. And so they don't have a lot of options there right now, especially considering Chris Oestreicher, who is another corner for them, went down in week 1 with a torn meniscus. They're shuffling through guys at a lot of different positions. The run defense, they have Calais Campbell, who's playing all-world football right now. He's been phenomenal this season. Brandon Williams, a very underrated run stuffer. They're missing Derek Wolfe a little bit, but they have the depth with second-year guys just Madubuike and Broderick Washington. The linebackers have been a bit of an issue this year at times. Patrick Queen has struggled for the last couple of weeks after having a pretty good week 1. Malik Harrison, another second-year linebacker, same thing-ish. So you're looking at the defense as a whole. They have the depth, but it's just a matter of executing. Adafe Owe, the rookie, has been outstanding this year. And so they're getting contributions from a lot of different guys, but it's just a matter of putting it all together and figuring it out in terms of how they can run this defense without a Marcus Peters on it.
Yeah. So you kind of answered my next question, which is great. But I was looking at your guys' depth chart before we talked, just doing a little prep. And, this defense, if I count right, has like 10 guys on the IR. Like, it's unreal. And it's surprising that the Ravens aren't getting talked about as much about their injuries. Obviously, we talked, preseason with the running backs, but I was looking over it. I'm like, man, I don't even hear about the Niners and all these other teams, but this Ravens has been ravaged with injuries. Who is a guy on the defense? You probably mentioned him already, but has stepped up in one of those guys being on IR that has been kind of surprising. Like, you're like, man, this guy is really playing well this season in relief of one of these guys on IR.
Yeah, well, definitely Anthony Averitt. If you're looking at pure player to IR replacement questions, I mean, Averitt is somebody who has shown flashes throughout his first couple of years. He's in year 4 now, but didn't really have a massive role. Had one for a little bit when the Ravens were dealing with an injury to Jimmy Smith last season. But now with Peters done for the year, Averitt's now been elevated to their number 2 corner. And again, outside of Indianapolis, I'm just kind of like blocking that out of my mind for him. He's been phenomenal, earning himself a lot of money. In that 2018 draft class, Lamar Jackson, Averitt, they have Bradley Bozeman, Deshaun Elliott. They're going to have to pay a lot of guys. Obviously, Jackson is going to be the big contract out of those. But the way that Averitt's been playing, again, outside of Indianapolis, he's been earning himself a lot of money. Also, Chuck Clark has stepped up in a big way, playing all different roles on this defense. Starting off as a strong safety, but he plays in the box. He can play up at the line. He can do a lot of different things. He's kind of like the heartbeat of that defense. Where's the green dot for them? And he's having, I think, his best season at the NFL level right now. Tavon Young, who has been injury prone in and out over his first couple of seasons, is kind of getting back to his level as a slot corner, one of the better ones in the NFL. But if I had to pick one of those guys, it'd definitely be Averitt in the place of Peters.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch how those matchups come to play. So, all right, Kevin, let's get out of here with this. We always do it at the end of our preview. It's always pointless, but it's always fun. We got to give our score predictions and whatnot. I think right now the line, Vegas has the Ravens -2.5 as the favorite at home at M&T Bank Stadium. So who do you like in this matchup? You can be a homer. That's totally fine. It should be a great game regardless, but who are you taking?
Well, I've gone back and forth on this, I think, for like the entire week, because this game literally could go either way. Yeah. It could be like last possession. And because of that, I'm picking the Ravens solely because I think it could come down to Justin Tucker at the end. And when betting against Justin Tucker, you're probably not going to have a good time. So yeah. I'm going to say it's going to be Ravens 33, Chargers 30, a last-second field goal from Justin Tucker at the end wins it. Super close game. Defenses that I think will have decently good games. I know my score prediction doesn't really say that, in the 30s for both teams. But at the end of the day, I think the Chargers, they haven't seen Lamar Jackson since that playoff game. And I know a lot of people don't want to talk about that playoff game here in Baltimore. But I think Jackson, the way he has ascended this season, the way Marquise Brown has come on and really taken on the role of being this Ravens number 1 wide receiver, which has been great to watch. Mark Andrews, and also stepping up contributors everywhere on the defense. I think it'll be Baltimore just by a hair here. I'm going 33-30 Ravens.
Yeah, Jackson's a little better now than he was in that rookie season playoff debut, where the Chargers defense played great. We're able to contain him mostly. And yeah, you mentioned it. Unfortunately, Chargers fans know all too well. Every year we have a kicking issue, and Tristan Vizcaino has had his issues this year. I think there's a question circulating around Twitter. I'm sure you saw it. I think even ESPN may have said something about it. But like, how high of a draft pick would you trade for Justin Tucker? Because that's how valuable he is. And a lot of people laugh and scoff at it. But when you think about the amount of games the Chargers have lost due to field goals or nowadays mixed extra points, I think you give up a lot for a guy like Justin Tucker that you trust every single game to make the big kick. So I agree with you. I think it's going to be close. It could come down to a last-second field goal. And if it's coming down to that, unfortunately, you take Tucker and the Ravens all day long. But we'll see how it goes. But Kevin Oestreicher, you're the man. Thanks for coming on with me and talking us through this matchup. Should be a great game. Where can everyone find you at and your work?
Yeah, so I host and produce the Locked On Ravens podcast. That's 5 days per week. It's about 30 to 45 minutes of Ravens talk every weekday. That's now on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts on audio form. So Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. Also, I write for the Ravens Wire, and you can find that ravenswire.usatoday.com. And also, you can find me on Twitter at ChaosStriker34. That's my personal account. And for the Locked On Ravens Twitter account, it's just at Locked On Ravens.
There you go. Does anyone call you Oz?
I've heard it before. There have been a couple people who have kind of made that my nickname.
But it's not like a in your friend circle nickname?
Some of them, they just go by Kev mostly. That's
Kev,
usually
okay.
the one that they go with. It. They kind of try to leave the last name out of it because it's so complicated.
Okay. Well, I love it. I think at the LA Football Network, you'll be known as Oz. From
Oh, yeah. All right. Let's lock that in. I like that.
All right, brother. Appreciate you. Thanks for coming on. Kevin Oestreicher, Locked On Ravens, Ravens Wire. Thanks for all the insight, all right?
Yeah, thanks so much, Ryan. It was a blast.
There he goes, Kevin Oestreicher. Great guest. A lot of fun, as always. This is going to be a great matchup, man. Great game. The way Justin Herbert's playing, the way Lamar Jackson's playing, the way both these coaches are coaching. It's still crazy to me that John Harbaugh, like 2 years ago, he wasn't even on the hot seat. He went from like being considered a good coach to all of a sudden everyone's like, yeah, the Ravens are ready to move on. And a lot of teams that were in the coaching search were like, okay, please, because we'll hire him in a heartbeat. There was like some rumors about trading for him if he was going to get fired. The guy produces. I mean, I saw a stat somewhere that he has, like, Kyle Shanahan has as many winning seasons as John Harbaugh has losing seasons in like 15 years with the Ravens, which is insane when you really think about it. Everyone knows I've brought up Kyle Shanahan and his record a lot, but has as many winning seasons, which is one, happened to go to the Super Bowl that year, but it's one, and John Harbaugh has one losing season. So this will be a tough matchup for the Chargers, but I just love what this Chargers team is doing and excited about how the fan base is growing, the vibe in LA here with this team at SoFi. Just a lot of fun to cover this team, this quarterback and this coach duo. And now we just need to see the defense improve, which I know we talked about a little bit, but we'll see how they do against this running game and Lamar Jackson. So should be a good one. We'll have plenty of coverage on Sunday for that game. We're doing LAFB Live before the game. We're doing LAFB Live after the game, breaking down what we saw. You can find all that on our Twitter account at LAFB Network or right on YouTube at LAFB Network if you want to tune in for all of those live shows on game day. But now let's get into my man, Tino. Love this guy, dude. He's got a lot of energy, a lot of passion for the Giants, and we have a lot of fun. So let's preview this Rams and Giants game. All right, Rams fans, as I mentioned in the interlude, excited to break down this Rams and Giants matchup. A 4-1 team, a 1-4 team, but hey, any given Sunday, you never know. We all know what happened in that Rams-Jets game last year. We don't want to see that happen again. And joining me on the LA Football Show, right here on the LA Football Network, also on AM the Mightier 1090, my good buddy, we've had him on the show a bunch throughout the years, does great work. He is now the executive producer for FTN Network, also does Giants coverage for Clapback Sports. Tino Rodriguez. What's up, brother? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good until you mentioned the records. I was doing really good until you mentioned it's 4-1 versus 1-4. I knew the records, but hearing it out loud makes it seem a lot worse. But yeah, I'm doing all right. We got a game on Sunday.
Right? That's right. On Sunday. So I've had you. We've obviously talked a lot over the last year. It's been 365 days, and every time we've talked, it's kind of the same song and dance, unfortunately, for Giants fans. You guys have, you haven't had a lot of success in recent years. The Rams, since McVay has got here, has had a lot of success. So kind of a different vantage points for fan bases. Before we get into this matchup, what's the vibe in New York? Are people still high on Joe Judge? Is there a lot of remorse about that hire? Is Danny Dimes the future? Just what's the overall thoughts on this New York football team?
Well, we don't have enough time to unpack each of those questions because those are loaded questions in New York and they're the back page every other day. So it's a lot. We can start with the vibe, and the vibe is honestly deflated and, pretty much defeated, more so because of the injuries. I wouldn't say it's as bad as it was 2 weeks ago, mainly because of that New Orleans win. It's just more disappointment because of you saw what they were able to do offensively, right? Mm-hmm. The weird thing that's going on with the Giants right now, it's reverse right now. It's reverse everything anyone thought about this team. A lot of teams are like this in the NFL, but you come in worried about Jason Garrett and the offense, questions about Danny's future, all these things, offensive line. And granted, the offensive line's been hurt and up and down, but still, aside from that, they've been the best part of this team. Whereas this defense that everyone felt great about, and Patrick Graham was the guy we could lean on, has let us down tremendously. So a little confused, a little sad, and a little disappointed, and just not great. Ryan, we're not feeling great on this side.
It's the New York way of life, I guess. The New York way of life, unfortunately. Is Joe Judge, is he is he the guy that you feel comfortable with going forward, or do you think they're throwing their hat into the coaching ring yet again, or is it a bigger issue and is it Dave Gettleman and maybe it's at the top where you need to look GM, or are they both safe? You think it's just more getting guys back from the IR? We mentioned it pre-air. Seems like you have a red marking next to every single player, whether it's IR, Q, or O. Is that more to put on it, or are these guys actually on the hot seat?
Well, I don't think it's one of those things where like you could look at it and blame injuries, like for the excuses, like, certain teams, like in different sports, it's like, well, how is he supposed to coach? Or look how great of a coach he is with all these injuries. I don't think it's that right now because it's all relatively recent and teams dealt with this last year. I mean, coaches get nixed over this all the time. The Eagles dealt with injuries last year. Peterson suffered for it. Cowboys were a really bad team last year, took a lot of heat, but their offensive line was in shambles. They lost Dak. Zeke was it. So like now it's our turn. This is football, physical sport. People get hurt. I think with Joe Judge, he's fine, but he's not resolved from all the issues. And I think it's more weird that he's so close to Patrick Graham. So let's put it this way. Everyone expected the first move after the frustration to be Jason Garrett, right? You look, they were like, we want Jason Garrett gone. I am team, even though the offense has been fixed, I still think he's ruining players, and I'd love to see Jason Garrett shipped out. But point being, everything's been fine offensively. And now all these injuries on the offensive side of the ball, why would you fire Jason Garrett? It won't resolve anything. There's nothing to gain from that. And realistically, you would probably look to the defense to do that. But he's so tight with Patrick Graham defensively. Like, where does the change come? Like, you feel so great about Judge. They clearly won't move on Garrett because of ownership, right? And then you look at Jason Garrett, at Patrick Graham, and he's not going to move on him because he brought him in. He's his guy. They're intertwined. They're shake and bake. As shout out to Talking Giants and Bobby Skinner. They have a shirt about it. They are tight. And then everyone's looking at Gettleman, but it's like the guy's not really doing much right now. It's like that's where you got to look at Joe Judge. This has been Joe Judge's team the last 2 years. And if it's not, I can't confidently say this is all Dave Gettleman. I would look a step up. And there's a reason why John Mara got booed at Eli Manning's retirement ceremony because fans aren't oblivious to it either. It's one of those things where it seems like all the pull and all the blame wants to go to Dave Gettleman. Sometimes you got to look even higher. You got to level it up a little bit because when ownership gets involved on draft decisions and player personnel decisions, it becomes an issue. And so you look at this Giants team, they haven't been good in a decade. And even in 2011, they had a lot of the similar problems they did now. And Eli masked a lot of those problems because as much as people don't give him credit, he balled out that year. So this is a team that hasn't been good in a decade, and I just don't think it's a Dave Gettleman or a Joe Judge thing. I just think systematically the Giants are off from the top down. That's
a fascinating point, and one that I don't think a lot of Rams fans probably know, so I wanted you to unpack it even more. Out here in LA, I think we're blessed, and everyone has their opinion on what ownership, how they want involved. We know the Cowboys, Jerry Jones, extremely involved. I mean, he's the GM of the team with his son now kind of taking over more responsibilities. But aside from him, a lot of ownership, and talking specifically about the Rams, you have Stan Kroenke that he does not put his hand in any football decisions. He basically said, I'm the business guy. I'm building this beautiful $6 billion stadium, make sure we market things correctly. But I hired Les Snead and Sean McVay for a job. They have full control of football operations. Go do your thing. Obviously, Kevin Demoff does some stuff too. He's more of the marketing side as well. How involved is ownership in Giants' decision? Because, I mean, we don't know really out here. Is that, you mentioned it, is that kind of the stained mark right now on this football team?
It's the thing is, you'll never know, but there's got to be a reason the guy's kicking over trash cans. I mean, he's got to feel like he's intertied with these decisions. Danny was a guy he definitely wanted. It's no doubt. Evan Ingram hasn't been moved in 2 years, and he's been a depreciating asset for a reason. That was their guy. You know what I mean? They wanted Solder. They wanted Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett is not a guy who came here because Joe Judge or Dave Gettleman. So it's like little things. If it's a whole, maybe not. But if you look at little bits of things that have happened, they definitely have a say on certain situations. And at times, like if you want to give the keys to the kingdom to Joe Judge, you got to do it. Or Dave Gettleman. But I just feel like there's just been pullback. And I think it's because they listen to the New York media and they listen to the fans and they listen to the scrutiny that they feel like they got to do what's best. And it just hasn't been what's best. Like, I think they overthink a lot of things, and I think they force a lot of the situations, and it's been bad football. It's just been a really bad brand of football for a decade here.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting. And I think that's Rams fans listening need to feel blessed because like McVay has total control. Les Snead makes obviously personal decisions, but a lot of those personal decisions have to go through McVay first. Like when someone needs to talk to ownership, when someone has to call Kroenke, I don't know if you knew this, but We've talked to a bunch of Rams beat writers, Jordan Rodriguez of The Athletic and stuff. And when there's decisions made, specifically like the Matt Stafford trade, it wasn't Les Snead that called Kroenke. It was Sean McVay and said, hey, this is what we're doing. I'm just getting you to sign off on it. And he's like, all right, cool. Let's make it happen. And so it's so different parallels, I guess, when you compare both franchises and you have the LA, New York thing, which makes it even more fun.
And you bring in Joe Judge, and that's what everyone thought. CEO type special teams coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't have too much on the offense. He doesn't have too much on the defense.
Like
you expected him to know a roster, right? That's what we were signing up for. He's going to know all the players, all 52. He's going to handle the personnel. He's going to make the decisions. And I think that's just more what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Could all this be speculation? Sure. But there are things that are not happening that should have happened, and it doesn't add up. It just doesn't make sense. And right now, with the Giants under fire in the second year of this, and say what you want about last year, and I was the biggest advocate of they fought hard under Judge, right? They won some games they shouldn't have. They finished one game out of the East. That was a terrible year to win the East, right? They could have competed, sure. But there are things and changes that need to be made. And I want, when those changes happen, for Joe Judge to make them. And we were saying we were looking for change going into New Orleans if things went poorly, and it didn't. So fine, so be it. We go into Dallas, and now this hits us, and it's like, well, what do you do? That's why it's like I'm lost in the sauce. I don't know how to feel as a Giants fan, because there was all this tug and pull of just like, we're over it, we're done, right? I was at the Falcons game. They retire Eli's jersey. You lose on a field goal to the Atlanta Falcons, who are not a good team.
Yeah,
they're a really bad team. And then it's like just so much distraught and anger with the fan base. Then you beat New Orleans, you get them back, and now all these injuries. It's like, well, how do we feel? Like, are we still mad at everyone? Do we hang on to what we saw? Like, are we ever? Ryan, I've never seen Danny and Saquon do what they did together in the same game than they did in New Orleans. Yet and still, like, other than Washington 2 years ago, it's like, I don't know if I'll ever see that again. That's what I said this on Clapback Sports 2 weeks ago. I get worried that that's the best we'll ever see it. In the moment, I thought it was Galladay's best game. Ingram wasn't dropping passes. Tony had a coming out party. Saquon caught and rushed in a touchdown. Danny threw for 400 yards. It was out of this world. It was a comeback fourth quarter win in overtime. Nuts. I'd never seen that. I haven't seen that in a decade. And I think I might have been right. I don't know. Based on the next week, I might have been right. It might have been the best. It will be for the foreseeable future. I mean, I don't know. I don't see it getting any better this week against the Rams.
Yeah, and it's, it pains me to say, and I know it pains you to say, but unfortunately, I think Dallas is actually just a good football club. As crazy as that is, as usually they always shoot themselves in the foot, but I think they're a solid team, and I think the Giants ran into that last week, and the injuries piled up. Now, in your summation or your guess, I guess there's no true things, but do you think Danny Dimes is playing this week? I know he's in the concussion protocol, but was out in pads yesterday, I believe. Do you think he's a go, or do you think we're going to see the Mike Glennon show on Sunday?
I'm praying they don't put him out there. So based on Judge's comments yesterday, he was surprised he was out there. Danny didn't do anything. He suited up and he was on the sideline. So I don't know what his action was today. I was on a football field at football practice for Weehawken High School. Yeah. And so I haven't seen anything that happened with the Giants at practice today. I know a bunch of injury stuff came up. So we'll see on that. But he did suit up. It seems like, and based on everything I'm seeing, it's going to be a game time decision, or it's going to like come down to, the evaluation and, concussion protocol and all. So it's very wishy-washy. It's complete speculation. I'm hoping they don't put him out there, because I don't know if Danny moves the needle this week one way or the other. I just don't. Like, we're down Andrew Thomas. We don't have our center, Nick Gates, who was the only one who did anything last year against the Rams to stand up for the beating they were giving us when he almost fought Aaron Donald, right? We don't have Galladay. We don't have Saquon. It's like, what are we bringing him out there for then? For what is this, the 10th anniversary of the Giants Super Bowl team? That's what we're bringing him out there for? Another embarrassment on a day that should matter? Like, dude, it's bad. It's Brian, if you can't hear the pain in my voice, I'm dying inside. I'm dying on the inside.
I could hear it. So if Glennon's the guy,
okay,
almost comical to say that, no disrespect, but if Glennon's the guy, and this Rams defense has been susceptible. I mean, I think this Rams team is a very good team. They're going to get better and better as the weeks go on, just as they get more succinct with their new coordinators and do all this. But they've given up yards, given up a lot of yards. They've been that bend but don't break. Any shot the Giants move the ball on this defense with Mike Glennon at QB? Do you have any confidence in him at all?
Yeah, no, well, so he's going to air the ball out. I was going to make the joke and say they're going to move the ball when Kadarius Toney is in at quarterback. Just wait for that one. You'll see that on Sunday. Definitely. You're definitely going to see it on Sunday. Yeah, because, I mean, He was Wildcat in the red zone when they needed him at the end of the Dallas game. Attempted a cross-field pass the last 2 weeks. He attempted it in New Orleans. He didn't actually attempt it, but the play was drawn up for it. So you'll see some trickery with the Giants in Tony. But Glennon's going to throw the ball around. He's going to turn the ball over. That's for sure. And I know you have a secondary who, as much of you could say they've gotten toasted, should be able to make some plays, I think, right? You're paying Jalen Ramsey enough money to make a play on Mike Glennon. But yeah, look, no Gali, Shep is questionable, Slane's questionable. If those guys play, maybe I feel a little better. But other than Tony, we're looking at Ingram, Kyle Rudolph, Colin Johnson, like not a great team, CJ Board. So yeah, I mean, they'll move the ball, but I don't know where the silver lining is other than Kadarius Toney. And another guy, he was a little questionable too. He's a little nicked up. That I wouldn't mind if we sat everyone and made this a preseason game. Just throw in the white flag and just wait for next week when everyone's back. It's like, what's the point? But no, yeah, seriously. So I think Tony's going to be their best bet. And as much as I hate to say it, probably the tight ends. You'd have to look for the tight ends to get involved. I don't believe in Booker very much. I know we'd want to say, well, what about running the ball? Offensive line really banged up. Nate Solder's at left tackle. Just know that's bad news if you don't know who Nate Solder is. Not great. Nate Solder's at left tackle. Devontae Booker.
Is that not to cut you off? Is that one of the worst contracts in history? Nate Solder coming from New England, because it was deemed as a great signing, and he just has not panned out with you guys.
Yeah, really bad, really bad. And we didn't know if he was going to be on the team. He didn't play last year because of COVID. He had personal reasons. Fine, no one's gonna. It's very touchy feely amongst the Giants fan base. But he's back, but a year off. They moved him to right tackle where he wasn't as bad as everyone thought, mainly because when he came on as a left tackle, a lot of the excuses were, well, you have to keep him there because you're paying him for it, and he's never played right tackle before. Just a ridiculous excuse. He's never played right tackle before. You can't move him there. So they eventually finally moved him there this year, but now Andrew Thomas is down, and so here we are. He's at left tackle. But Booker, even with Saquon, they didn't run the ball very well outside of Danny. So I mean, Booker would probably have to get it going in the passing game as well on some check down stuff. I know we had like 9 receptions last week, but I don't know. For me, I'm a football guy through and through. I just don't think you get very far doing that. I don't, not against a good, competent Rams defense. I have a lot of respect for your defense. So,
yeah. Well, and I agree. I think they get a lot of slack in as Rams fans because we saw what they did last year, but they haven't been like atrocious. They haven't been bad. The Rams defense, that is. And they still have superstars on each level, and I think we'll continue to get better. So, looking at your guys' defense, you kind of mentioned it right in the beginning when we talked there, but this was a unit that was coming in almost considered universally as like a top 10, maybe even top 5 unit. Yeah, it had some good games last year, returned a lot of guys. What do you think has been the biggest issue? Has it just been injuries, or is there a schematic issue that, because even in week 1, we saw Denver, who has not a great offense, move the ball well. We've seen some other teams move the ball well. What do you think is the biggest issue with this defense? And second part of that question, how nervous are you playing this Matt Stafford-led offense that we've seen put up 40-plus points in multiple weeks?
I'll answer the second part first. We just gave up 40 to the Cowboys, and like you said, I've seen the Denver Broncos do it to us. So not that nervous. It would be more of the norm at this point. So kind of numb and immune to it. Yeah, if it happened by a good offense, I'd at least be like, hey, they were good offense, right? It's not. At least the Falcons got held to 14 points.
There you go.
Yeah, so defensively, same problem as always. We paid Leonard Williams a ton of money, and I don't think this is on Leonard Williams. He's not a true defensive end. Say what you want. Had a career year last year. He got paid. Another thing, very touchy-feely around the Giants community. I think an underlining thing here, and people don't like to talk about this, they decided to move on from Dalvin Tomlinson, who took on a lot of the double teams for Leonard Williams last year, freed him up in one-on-ones that didn't make Leonard work as hard. We have no pass rush still. Right, Azeez Ojulari we drafted. He's been really good, but that's not going to be enough. And so the Giants schematically got a lot of their success from their schemes and what Patrick Graham was calling, and a lot of their pressures based on that. And they just haven't been able to do that. So you got to look at the DC. What I hinted at in the beginning. I think a lot of untimely play calling. He's either going soft zone or man at the worst times possible. I mean, we're talking like, 3rd and 8, we got secondary guys 8 yards off the ball type of thing. It's like, it just doesn't even make sense. Yeah. And then
for a first down.
Exactly. And then, you're lining up one-on-one outside with guys like Judy or KJ Hamler, and you're just asking to get beat deep, and teams are going to take those shots. And just, it's not that you don't want those matchups from time to time, and sometimes they haven't converted them, but it's the timeliness of the calls. And last year I felt like he was on his P's and Q's with that stuff. And this year it hasn't been good. You know, if you really want an example, look at the Washington game. Thursday Night Football was probably, I think, one of his worst called games. Denver was really bad in terms of soft zone, but Washington was just bad in terms of defensive alignment, from linebackers to D-line. I mean, J.D. McKissick scored probably the easiest touchdown in NFL history that year based on just people not being in the right place. And those are things you got to look at the coaching staff. It could be a miscommunication in terms of players, but misalignment, bad play calling. I mean, you know, you don't talk about another man's job, Ryan. I'm just saying, blame's got to go somewhere. Got to go somewhere. All right?
The blame pie ticks in a certain direction, and the pieces get bigger and bigger for certain areas. Last thing about the defense, then we'll get you out of here on a prediction. But the secondary, I mean, you've alluded to the whole defense as a whole. Safeties have been very questionable. You have injuries there as well. You look at this Rams passing attack with, I think, from 1 to 5, the most talented wide receiver unit. I'm not saying the best receiver number 1 overall, but from 1 to 5, that depth and what they have, it's pretty damn good compared to maybe the Cardinals or the next, I think, them two fighting back and forth between the top 5. Do you have any hope that they can slow these guys down, or are you thinking this Rams, wide receiver unit will be able to kind of pick apart this secondary?
As a Giant fan, we have every offensive player hurt. So the only thing, if you're watching the game, you can root for is the defense. I mean, realistically at this point, right? I mean, that's where most of our money is contractually anyways. So yeah, I mean, I want to have hope that Adoree Jackson plays better than he's been and James Bradbury plays better than he's been. And like the guys who are, playing lackluster, and Xavier McKinney, someone I've been excited to see, he's on the field and he's just like, he's there. And I don't know he's there. He's making no impact plays. Jabril Peppers can't guard a tight end, so I'm sure Higbee's going to score a touchdown against us. Yeah, I mean, and I do want to talk about the Rams here for a second. I know I'm on for the Giants, but love the Rams wide receivers. I loved last week, and it queued it up perfectly, but everyone's like, yeah, we really got to get Robert Woods involved. It's like, they're going to get Robert Woods involved. Like, that's the thing. Like, you guys are complaining about, like, it's such a good problem to have. Like, It's not bad that Van Jefferson is getting more touches than Robert Woods. Like, that, as a fan, if I'm seeing Van Jefferson getting 6 targets a game and he's actually making use out of those targets, and Deshaun's catching his 1 target a game for 80 yards and a touchdown, like, we're winning. We don't even have to use plays to Robert Woods. We don't have to put that on film. We don't have to display Robert Woods. Good. Look at Cooper Kupp, and then bang. Last week you saw it. Higbee got involved after having down weeks, and Robert Woods got involved after having down weeks. I love the offense. I think you can go so many places with it. So I feel confident that they could slow him down. Realistically, I don't know how you stop it. I like your offensive line. I think Daryl Henderson's underrated. A lot of people don't like him because of the injuries and, what you see Cam Akers. How can you like Daryl Henderson? You've seen him before. I don't think he's as bad as everyone says he is. I think he can do it both from the backfield. And so, I think they have a really good balanced attack. And as long as Stafford's finger's okay, you shouldn't have a problem moving the ball against the Giants. You really should.
A story every week, Stafford's finger. And Daryl Henderson, I think, is great. And his biggest thing is just, the injury bug and whether he can stay on the field. Even last week, come out for a few series. But when he's on the field, he's been extremely efficient. Like his average per carry is great. The way he, sees the vision, sees the hole, he's been great. Sonny Michel's been a nice acquisition, mainly in pass pro. I think he's been great in blocking, but he does add a dynamic in the running game as well. So it's funny you mentioned Robert Woods. It's like if you had a garage full of cars and you had, the Ferrari, the Viper, the Corvette, and you're like, man, I'm not driving my Lamborghini enough. Like I should probably drive that on like a Saturday or something just to get some miles on it. It's like, it's a good problem to have.
Save it for Thursday Night Football, right? Just save it for Thursday Night Football when people we just want more people watching, right? Yeah. We just want a few more eyes on it.
There you go. Yeah. Get it on there. So we'll end with this, my man. Judging by your demeanor and your overall positivity on this Giants squad, who you taking this one? You like the Rams taking it? You like the Giants taking it? What's your score prediction?
So I go from a betting perspective. If Danny is not playing, this should be a 14.5 point line. It is at 10.5 right now. I just feel that strongly about it. I feel that strongly about the Rams. And I feel that strong about the Giants if they do not have any of those players play. But if Danny's playing, fine, 10.5. I think if Danny's playing, I feel good enough that we could keep it within the 10.5 range. I think they could cover 10.5. I don't think he's playing though. So here's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go modestly. We'll go 31-17. That's what I'll say. That's okay. It's about as good as it's going to get. We would cover the 14.5. That's optimistic.
Yeah, that is.
I don't feel good about that. It hurt. That hurt a lot. You got it. You're lucky I like you. I'm giving the Giants 2 touchdowns. Oh my God. I don't know where that's coming from. Oh,
take it if you can.
God.
But the one thing I'll say is the Rams are up and down traveling east for a morning game. They've played great in some. They played great against Philly last year, played solid, at least putting up points against the Bills. They did lose that game. But then they've had others where they come out and look a little lackluster. So it'll be interesting to see. That's always, I think it's a dumb storyline. Coaches get asked it every week by reporters like, oh, what's the travel out east? Like early start time. And, these guys are professional making $20 million. You should be able to wake up a little earlier and play this game, I would think.
Yeah. Well, the East Coast, West Coast thing does exist. But in this case, I just don't see it mattering very much. Again, I wouldn't be surprised, though. I don't know 48. I don't know where the line is, but it's probably too much because I'd take the under. I don't even know what the line is. I'd take the under.
The line, you hit on the head. The line right now is 48, according to Bet Online, depending, I guess, where you go. But
I'm getting too good at this, Ryan.
You are.
All right, let's call it 30-17. We got the under.
30-17 with the under.
Yeah, we got the under on that one.
Okay. All right. There we go. Giants put up a little defense at the end. No garbage time stuff. So, my man, Tino Rodriguez, go ahead and let everyone know again where they can find you and all your work.
So, yeah, at Tino Rodriguez, _. I'm not really active on Twitter. I try to be a social media guy, but it's nice to decompress every now and then. You should try it, guys. You should really try it. It's not too bad. But yeah, at Tino Rodriguez, _. Obviously, executive producer at FTN Network. Anything involving me, I produce everything over there. So if you don't see me on the productions, I am behind the screen doing everything behind the scenes. So follow FTN Bets, Fantasy Daily. I mean, we got it all. We got you covered with every sport. I don't even need to brag about it. It's every sport. It's a little ridiculous. Basketball season's coming up. We're in the midst of football, MLB picks. Obviously, we're in the postseason. So a lot of sports going on. It's kind of the witching hour of months when you think about it. It's like March Madness of the fall in a sense right now because of all the sports. Hockey. We even got hockey going on right now. So
hockey's back, baby. On ESPN.
Yeah, on ESPN. I saw Gretzky on TV talking to Ovechkin yesterday, so nice little sighting there. So a lot of sports going on. FTN's got you covered. And then, for my Giants stuff, follow Clapback Sports. They are active on Twitter, but it's not me on the account. I cannot take credit for that account.
There you go. One of the hardest working guys in the biz. Appreciate you as always, man. And I know this was last minute, so thanks for jumping on with me. And hopefully we have an entertaining game, at least somewhat. We'll see.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah. All right, brother. Appreciate you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem, man.
All right, Tino, my man. Hope you guys enjoyed that interview. This should be a win for the Rams, but it's any given Sunday. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the show, that Rams-Jets game, real letdown and cost the Rams home field advantage. So this is a game. It's a must-win game, in my opinion. Not must-win because we're at, playoff time of the season, or this is going to knock them, out of the playoffs, something like that, but must win because it's a team that they should beat. I mean, the Rams are good enough. They should beat pretty much any team. A loss to the Cardinals, as bad as that loss was, Cardinals are a damn good football team. They're playing at a very high level, the only undefeated left in the NFL. If you lose to the Giants, then maybe we can uptick the concern level a little bit. So must win game for them. Hopefully the Bruins continue that momentum from Arizona and win up in Washington. But that's all the time I have. This is the LA Football Show. Thank you guys all for tuning in. As I always say, make sure to check out all of our work at LAFBnetwork.com. Subscribe to the show wherever you listen on podcasts or on YouTube at LAFB Network. Really appreciate it. I'm loving the interaction we're getting, loving the growth we're seeing. We've got some 2 killer events that we're announcing. I'll probably announce them next week. We're just working out the logistics. But essentially, it's going to be a way to get together with fans for a Chargers game, for a Rams game, do some in-house hanging out, drinking, tailgating with transportation to the game. I'll tease it at that. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited about, and that's kind of our goal with this LA Football Network is community-driven media content is kind of our plan for that. So thank you all for tuning in. This is the LA Football Show. I'm Ryan Dyrud. Enjoy these weekend games, and we'll talk next week. Or like I said, hit us up on game day for all of our live shows. You can see right on Twitter or YouTube, both at LAFB Network. You can find me at Ryan Dyrud, LAFB. Peace.